What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl JD here, back with another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at 90 Day Fiancé Ever After again. And this is basically the last couple of episodes before we get into the tell-all, because that tell-all looks like it's going to be pretty lengthy and it's probably going to be a lot of drama. So it's probably going to be a packed set of videos, or maybe a video depending. So we'll see. So just make sure you stay tuned for those, okay? So leading up to this tell-all, there has definitely been no shortage of, again, drama with pretty much the majority of these couples, except for maybe two, like maybe Patrick and Thais, and then Alexi and Lauren. They seem to have been, you know, pretty chill couples throughout this season. So we're gonna probably give them just a minute or two, you know, but then the rest of the video is mainly focused on our other couples. Really quickly, I do want to let you guys know that I made a video about the other set of episodes. If you guys need to catch up, I'm gonna link that video in the corner here for you, and then you could just, you know, hop onto this one if you're a little bit behind with what's going on. So catch up, then come back to this one. So now we're gonna get into it. Let's start with Gino and Jasmine yet again. So things are continuing to go downhill at the pageant, and Gino isn't really giving Jasmine positive feedback. However, I do think that she appreciated to an extent what he was saying, but it was like, okay, you could have sandwiched it, because you know she could be a little sensitive, especially now, because the only real reason that she even signed up for the pageant, to be honest, was because she was feeling a little insecure about herself and how she looked and her body and all that stuff. So she wanted to use that as an opportunity to kind of gain confidence. So you knocking her down constantly about her, like her, you know, I think he said her posture and all that stuff, how she walked. I'm like, Gino, clearly she doesn't really care about this pageant. It's what the pageant stands for. So it was just kind of like, why don't you just give her more positive feedback than negative? Like, she doesn't actually care that much about winning. So Jasmine's emotions, in typical fashion, are all over the place, and she disinvites Gino to the rest of her rehearsals for the pageant because she just felt like he was just not understanding what she needed from him in those moments. Now, he still attends the big finale and the award ceremony at the end, but there clearly was still tension between them. And when the pageant night is over, they have an argument that kind of starts off about Gino's support of Jasmine in general, and then it kind of ends and there's like a big explosion with Jasmine asking him if he filed her permanent residency paperwork. At least I think it was the permanent residency, because I think you need to do that and then get the green card or something like that. I don't know. Y'all let me know if I had that backwards. It was some type of like immigration paperwork basically. And she just straight out asked him, you know, like, yes or no. Like, did you file it? Yes or no? And Gino pretty much just kept bouncing around answering the question. He was just like, you know how much I did for you? How about you just give me some like appreciation? I don't feel like you appreciate all that I did for you, bringing you to America and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, Gino, how many times are you gonna bring this back up and throw it back in her face? Like, we get it. Okay, you brought her to the US, you did it by yourself, you filed the paperwork, awesome. Now could we move on? He makes it sound like it's some type of prize, like you are the one that also wanted her to come over, so you know what I mean? It was a little strange that he brought that up. But again, she kept pushing him like, yes or no, and he would refuse to answer it. And finally, he says, no, I didn't finish it. I'm like, geez, Gino, you could have just said that. So obviously that paperwork is necessary to do and file before she could even think about trying to file paperwork to get her kids over there. So that also halts that process. And I'm like, Gino, what are you doing? What is the issue? What is the holdup, and why are you taking so long? So Jasmine doesn't really trust him now that we find out that Gino didn't really finish the paperwork. And now she ends up sleeping in a separate room, but they're in a pretty fragile state when we kind of end at that last episode. But Gino even had also said that he doesn't know how their relationship and marriage is going to survive at this point. We're going to move to Manuel and Ashley. So after Manuel asks Ashley for more money, she then confronts him about possibly sending money to and also talking to his ex-girlfriend slash baby mama. And he decides to pretty much after that go and talk to Ashley. And he tries to be vulnerable. He starts crying and all that. He puts on the waterworks, which is unusual for Manuel. We know this. But he decides to start sharing his feelings with her about not being able to provide financially. Ashley and that he's missing his family back in Ecuador. And of course Ashley falls for it because that's all she's been asking of him, to basically share his feelings with her and also share what he's thinking. But when Ashley takes him and her family to a whiskey tasting for his birthday, all hell seems to break loose. And Ashley's sister kicks things off by telling their mom what all has been going down with Manuel lately, and now she kind of confronts him about it all. And then Ashley also starts pressing Manuel about the $1,000 that she sent him before the extra $300 that he was asking for, remember? And at first he said it was in the bank, but then that changed to it's all gone because he had to pay back debts that he still had in Ecuador. So now Ashley catches him in a lie pretty much, because she heard from him that it was going to his family's bills at first, and now we found out this man has debt to repay, even though he was coming after Ashley about her student debt. So he's basically super drunk at this point, and they just go home after that really embarrassing fiasco, because all of this happens in front of her friends and family, and they're just looking at Manuel like, oh wow, and they're looking at Ashley like, so you just let this happen, pretty much? You're just gonna let him take advantage of you? So yeah, it's really embarrassing. Let's move on to Rob and Sophie. So after Sophie leaves Rob yet again to go and stay with her friend because she needs a break, since Rob, again, just wasn't really getting it, wasn't really understanding where she was coming from, Rob decides to go back home to Kansas City for his birthday to visit his mom and see his friends. But Rob was playing with fire, allowing this woman in this club to be all over him and not putting a stop to it, and not telling her straight up that he was married. That's almost as bad as cheating in my eyes. So he comes back to Dallas and just decides that he's had enough with his and Sophie's little separation thing that they had going on. So he goes to Sophie's friend's house to basically read her a breakup letter to her face, and it's super awkward, as you would imagine. And Sophie, of course, gets up, doesn't even let him finish, and he just yells at Sophie's friend because Sophie's friend comes out after she hears a little bit of this letter. It's just a back and forth exchange, everyone's getting mad, and then eventually Rob just kind of walks off and sits in the car. Now Sophie comes back out and she goes to Rob's car and she's sobbing, breathing super fast. It sounded like she was basically having a panic attack. And then she leaves, and then she goes back to her friend's apartment, and then also Rob kind of follows her into the apartment to continue their conversation. But again, they don't really talk. It was just really dumb to me, the whole situation, how it was handled. It wasn't well thought through. Rob just basically comes out and says that he just wants to leave this marriage. But it's just honestly wild that he would be the one to break up with her after all the foolishness he was doing. Everything that she had to deal with and accept, it was just like, okay, buddy. Kobe and Emily. So we left off at Kobe and Emily's traditional Cameroonian wedding, and Valerie, Kobe's friend, makes his speech and actually has something nice to say. And it just seems like he's pretty much kind of sort of buried the hatchet between him and Emily, at least for now. It seems like he accepts her, so we'll just take it at face value. Now after the wedding, they say their goodbyes to Kobe's family, they give his dad a gift, and they're packing up to leave Cameroon, and Kobe shares his idea that he would like to possibly move back to Cameroon for a little while with Emily and the kids. And of course, Emily is just sitting there like, sir, the vacation was nice and all, but I don't really think you thought this through, which I personally would have to agree. It just didn't seem like a thought through plan yet. Even though it sounds nice and that you kind of be back with your family, what are you going to do for an income? Are you going to be able to give your family the same quality of life that they have in America? You have to ask these questions and really think about the answers. So even Emily's dad asked him, like, what is his plan about being able to make money? And this man just says, I'll have businesses. Like, what does that mean, Kobe? What businesses? What are you going to do for money? I'm like, okay, Kobe. They get back to the US and surprise, they're now expecting their third child together. Now they have to tell Emily's parents, and they do end up telling them that they've been out looking for a place to live, and they tell them about the houses first, of course, because the baby news would be pretty much a bombshell. They tell them about the houses first, and then they give the baby news. And the parents are floored. They don't even know what to say. They're just in shock. It's just silence, and low-key kind of awkward silence. So you could see that Kobe is embarrassed that this even happened again after he promised her dad that they wouldn't have another child under their roof. I do feel like Emily's parents, in some ways, they even mention it as well, that they're kind of enabling them, low-key, because it's just like, why didn't y'all use protection? Y'all know the type of situation you're in. You are living in your parents' basement trying to make that work. So I just feel like the parents low-key are just enabling them just a little bit because they're just there to help them with everything all the time. It kind of gives, I think, Kobe and Emily an opportunity to really take advantage of that. I'm not saying that they are, but when you do have parents that are as nice as them, allowing them to stay in the house, babysitting, doing all this stuff, it's like, I feel like you could be enabling them just a little bit. So I hope they end up finding a place before that child is born. Now, Ed and Liz. So there hasn't really been any updates since Liz faced off with Ed again to pack up her stuff. She pretty much just left after their last argument, and she and her mom had pretty much headed out from the house, and there's not really kind of much else that happens afterwards. Next, we have Alexi and Lauren. Not much here either, but they do have an argument about her wanting to go back to work. Alexi is clearly very traditional, underline very, and only sees her at home pretty much taking care of the kids. And he doesn't want to be her cheerleader, is what he flat out says. He's just like, what man wants to be his wife's cheerleader or something like that? And I was like, I mean, can't y'all both be each other's cheerleaders? Isn't that the whole point of a marriage, to cheer each other on? I don't know, maybe I'm just thinking about it a little too deeply, but I thought that is kind of what your partner is supposed to do. But anyways, they do finally come to an understanding shortly after that little argument. But now Lauren says that she's not happy that she lost a lot of her fat transfer with her mommy makeover, so she wants to now go back and do it again, I guess. And her family is most definitely not happy about that. So yeah. We're gonna move on to Patrick and Thais. Patrick decides to take Thais, her dad, and John on a mini vacation out of town. But Patrick takes this opportunity to try to have a little talk with Thais' dad, but he kept turning down all the activities that Patrick was suggesting. So he just seemed really disinterested in everything to do with Patrick, but was more interested in hanging out with John, even though John couldn't even speak a lick of Portuguese. But it was like, I mean, why can't you just go talk to Patrick? Like, it just seemed like he was wasting time in my eyes. But anyways, finally Patrick and Thais' dad get a little bit of time while they were playing pool to talk about him giving Patrick and Thais his blessing. Finally he gives it. There's a little bit of an emotional moment there, but he finally gives the blessing. And it also seems like John and Thais finally have their heart-to-heart moment as well. Patrick speaks to his dad about the apartment situation, and they talk a little bit about their non-existent relationship when Patrick was younger. It's so interesting to me watching that play out, because Patrick's dad is just like, you know, I didn't really have a father either. And even Patrick notices, like, that's not an excuse, you know what I'm saying? And he even says that. He's just like, that's not an excuse. Like, you should have still been there. And I totally agree. How the heck do you think, because you didn't have a dad, that you could just say that and get a pass for not being a dad to Patrick? Anyways, he does talk about the apartment situation. They kind of seem to sort it out, but we'll see. Michael and Angela, I saved them for the last because, oh my god, in the last video it was just fireworks. So after all of the arguing, because there was a lot of it, Michael finally makes his way over to the States, or Georgia more specifically, and they surprise her daughter Skylar and the grandkids with Grandpa Michael, because at first they were kind of playing this idea that Angela just came home by herself, so they like kind of played it up as though he didn't get to the States, but he actually did. So he just waited for a little bit and then he came inside and he was like, surprise, I'm here. So it was cute. But you could see Skylar was trying to hide her disappointment. Michael walks through the door and she's just like, oh, you are here. It was just so funny watching her facial expressions the entire time. So in terms of weather, you know, adjusting, Michael was having a little bit of a difficult time because it was cold as soon as they landed, because it was around Christmas time. And he's also trying to adjust to the food. And Angela takes him to a restaurant owned by a friend of hers, and she orders him some shrimp and grits, and she also gets him to try some of her pork ribs, but he kind of blows something out of his mouth. But Angela thinks that he actually spat something out of his mouth. I feel like there's a difference between you spitting something out and you just kind of doing one of those, you know, like just trying to blow it out. I feel like it could have just been that he got a little bit of that hard bit that kind of forms on top of the ribs when they're grilling. He could have got maybe a piece of that in his mouth and he just didn't want to like chew it or swallow it, so he just kind of you know, did one of those blowing motions. Angela, of course, she has to be dramatic about the whole thing. She basically reenacts what she thinks he did. And I was like, Angela, you're ruining the experience. Like, it really wasn't that deep. Of course, Angela was quick to have Michael doing all the work around the house, and she had him putting up Christmas lights, doing laundry, and then he got to try some Christmas food, which I personally did not think was a good representation of Southern food, to be honest. It just looked very questionable sitting on that table. And even Michael was like, I'm just going to eat what I can eat. And I was just like, I don't know if you could eat that much, Michael. I don't. So Skylar, while they're at the table eating their Christmas dinner, asks Michael why he hasn't been taking pictures since he's been there. And he basically tells her flat out, like, Angela, she broke my phone. Afterwards, she kind of pulls Skylar aside and she just kind of gives Skylar her version of events. And she tells Skylar that she just wants to keep the peace for now. But after a few weeks, Angela would seek out a PI or a private investigator to pretty much investigate Michael because she claims he was still acting sketchy. And I'm like, okay, Angela, sure. You know what I'm saying? I obviously believe her because I do think Michael does some strange things, and then sometimes he would have like appropriate reasons for doing it, but other times it's just like, yeah, that don't sound right, Michael. I just don't know what's going on there. But apparently she would catch him on the phone and he would like jump whenever he sees her, so he's doing something. At least to her, it seems as though he's doing something strange. But that's gonna be it for those episodes leading up to the tell-all. You guys stay tuned for the other video that I'm gonna make about the tell-all, or videos. We're gonna see, okay? I don't know how I'm going to do it, but regardless, there's going to be some content about that coming out soon. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.